lonely. She had never lived in England, and she'd got no old friends or cronies, and of course she had a lot of time on her hands. Anyway, she told me about 6 months ago that she was thinking of taking up this job. Job? Warden, I think they call it, or matron, of a hostel for students. It was owned by a woman who was partly Greek, and she wanted someone to run it for her, manage the catering and see that things went smoothly. It's an old-fashioned rooming house in Hickory Road, if you know where that is. Poirot did not. It used to be a superior neighbourhood once, and the houses are well built. My sister was to have nice accommodation, bedroom and sitting room, and a tiny bath kitchenette of her own. Miss Lemon paused. Poirot made an encouraging noise. So far, this did not seem at all like a tale of disaster. I wasn't any too sure about it myself, but I saw the force of my sister's argument. She's never been one to sit with her hands crossed all day long, and she's a very practical woman, and good at running things, and of course it wasn't as though she were thinking of putting money into it or anything like that. It was purely a salaried position. Not a high salary, but she didn't need that, and there was no hard physical work. She's always been fond of young people and good with them, and having lived in the East so long, she understands racial differences and people's susceptibilities, because these students at the hostel are of all nationalities. Mostly English, but some of them are black, I believe. Naturally, said Hercule Poirot. Half the nurses in our hospital seem to be black these days, said Miss Lemon doubtfully, and I understand much pleasanter and more attentive than the English ones, but that's neither here nor there. We talked the scheme over, and finally my sister moved in. Neither she nor I cared very much for the proprietress, Mrs. Nicolaides, a woman of very uncertain temper, sometimes charming and sometimes, I'm sorry to say, quite the reverse, and both cheese-paring and impractical. Still, naturally, if she'd been a thoroughly competent woman, she wouldn't have needed any assistance. My sister is not one to let people's tantrums and vagaries worry her. She can hold her own with anyone, and she never stands any nonsense. Poirot nodded. He felt a vague resemblance to Miss Lemon showing in this account of Miss Lemon's sister, a Miss Lemon softened, as it were, by marriage and the climate of Singapore, but a woman with the same hard core of sense. So, your sister took the job? He asked. Yes, she moved into 26 Hickory Road about 6 months ago. On the whole, she liked her work there and found it interesting. Hercule Poirot listened. So far, the adventure of Miss Lemon's sister had been disappointingly tame. But for some time now she's been badly worried. Very badly worried. Why? Well, you see, Monsieur Poirot, she doesn't like the things that are going on. There are students there of both sexes? Poirot inquired delicately. Oh, no, Monsieur Poirot, I don't mean that. One is always prepared for difficulties of that kind. One expects them. No, you see, things have been disappearing. Disappearing? Yes, and such odd things, and all in rather an unnatural way. When you say things have been disappearing, you mean things have been stolen? Yes. Have the police been called in? No, not yet. My sister hopes that it may not be necessary. She's fond of these young people, of some of them, that is, and she would very much prefer to straighten things out by herself. Yes, said Poirot thoughtfully, I can quite see that. But that does not explain, if I may say so, your own anxiety, which I take to be a reflex of your sister's anxiety. I don't like the situation, Monsieur Poirot. I don't like it at all. I cannot help feeling that something is going on which I do not understand. No ordinary explanation seems quite to cover the facts, and I really cannot imagine what other explanation there can be. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. Miss Lemon's heel of Achilles had always been her imagination. She had none. On questions of fact she was invincible. On questions of surmise she was lost. Not for her the state of mind of Cortez's men upon the peak of Darien. Not ordinary petty thieving, eh? A kleptomaniac, perhaps? I do not think so. I read up on the subject, said the conscientious Miss Lemon, in the Encyclopaedia Britannica and in a medical work, but I was not convinced. Hercule Poirot was silent for a minute and a half. Did he wish to embroil himself in the troubles of Miss Lemon's sister and the passions and grievances of a polyglot hostel? But it was very annoying and inconvenient to have Miss Lemon making mistakes in typing his letters. He told himself that if he were to